Good morning, White Willow. Today, I really wanted to share a story with you that I read a few years ago. And when I was president of the East Seminole Republican Club, or maybe a little bit before that. And I kept wanting to share it at the meeting because I feel like it was really relevant to our time. Um, but I didn't have time to do it. We had an election going on. I was trying to help get DeSantis reelected, and I just wanted to, it just wasn't the right time to tell the story. So today is the day I'm going to talk to you a little bit about patriotism, loyalty, um, commitment to what's right, and what it takes. So, some of you, and probably most of you, have not heard of a girl named Sophie Scholl. Sophie Scholl was born in Germany. She was born to a father who was a Lutheran. He raised his family Lutheran. She had 5 sisters and brothers. And she was just an ordinary girl. She wanted for nothing, really. Her dad was a mayor of a town in Germany, and they really lived a good life. Um, so as she was growing up, she saw the her world in Germany changing to um, a more dictatorship, leaning towards this man named Hitler, and really not knowing anything about it. As a young preteen, she decided to join the uprise that was happening um, towards the German Hitler lifestyle and or regime, I guess I should call it. So Sophie had a group of girls that they gathered together, and they created like a German Legion of Ladies or German Legion of Girls called the League of German Girls. So these girls really took to um, any publicity that they could as young preteens, just getting on board with the latest shiny thing, what everybody else is following. So they were going to jump on board and be part of that group, part of the popular group at school, part of the popular group in their community, against what her father and her older brother Hans believed and guided her in. She still followed that shiny object of the German regime. So this was, it created some sort of little conflict between them. But by the time she was a teenager, Germany had invaded Poland and was trying to invade other areas as well. Hitler has now become the leading reign in Germany, and she saw this transition of how Hitler's group of people treated not just the Jews, but artists as well. So she started to think about and really process what this was looking like when she saw a certain group of people excluded and really abused, tortured, and murdered. And she, at that particular time, was dating a German young man who was in the regime, who she wrote a letter to that stated, um, I just can't believe that anybody would fight for the harm to come to another person. So she broke off that relationship, and she started to realize that the way she had been endorsing or encouraging people to join the German regime was completely false and completely wrong. She had an awakening. She was enlightened by what she saw around her. She had her eyes open, so she was able to receive the information and process it and really determine what was right and wrong. And her and her brother went to Munich University in Germany. So he went first. She followed along with him. They ran around the same circle of friends. They were very into art. Sophie was a pianist, so she did She did enjoy her friends at the university, but the whole country was under the ruling of Hitler. And she could see that the pressures of the towns and the city were affecting the universities, and Hans was very much opposed to the German ways at that time, and he wanted to, and his professor had decided to start a group, and this group was going to bring an awareness to the communities, especially at the universities, because the universities are where Hitler wanted to mold those kids the most, and he needed the youth to really progress his vision for Germany and the regime. So it was not allowed to be spoke out at the universities at all against Hitler or against the regime that he created in this whole country. As Sophie seems to be a leader, a born leader, she didn't fall shy of attempting to make a difference in whatever her cause was that she followed at that time. But this cause was different. This cause was deeper, and it was passionate, and it wasn't a fly by night, and it wasn't a shiny object. It was about truth, and it was about stopping the way that other people were treated, um, and not being able to get the word out. So, 6 people originally were in the group called the White Rose. The White Rose was organized originally by the professor Hans, Sophie, and 3 other members. So what they did was they started to make up flyers. These flyers had different series. They actually had 6 different series of flyers. So they actually distributed them at 6 different times throughout the universities. They had to be discreet about it, and they had to be very secretive, because this was not allowed, and you were not allowed to speak up against the current government. So now Sophie and Hans and the professor and these 3 other people were kind of putting their future at risk by distributing these flyers. Well, believe it or not, they distributed 5 different series of flyers without being caught. So they were very sleuth about it. So now the White Rose had actually been working on their 6th series of flyers. There were 1,700 flyers printed, and they were able to start distributing them again through the university. For some reason, Sophie had decided that she had flyers left, and they couldn't get them to enough people at the fastest rate that she would like. So she climbed up on the 3rd story of the university inside building of the Munich University, and she threw them over the balcony into the atrium. So hundreds of flyers fell to the ground, and lo and behold, what they called a caregiver of the university saw her and reported her and Hans to the Gestapo. So when that happened, of course, they were taken into custody, and they were arrested, and they were tried, and they were sentenced to death. They were encouraged or bargained with or tortured enough verbally and threatened the lives of the other 3 people that were involved, but Sophie and Hans would not reveal their sources or the other people that were involved. But the Gestapo, at no end, did find out who these 3 other people and murdered them. Well, actually 4, because the professor was murdered as well. So Sophie and Hans were both put in prison. So on the date that they were to be executed, Hans was brought to the grounds screaming, "Long live freedom." He still believed in his cause. He was willing to die for his cause. He was willing to die for the freedom of the people, not only in the university, but in Germany altogether, against the regime of Hitler and the reign and his power and control of all of the people. He wanted so badly to get the word out that he was willing to die screaming, "Long live freedom." Sophie was only 21 years old. She knew what she did, and she knew what she was doing. She was not afraid. She was not um, in distress. As she was placed in the guillotine, because that's how they executed them at that time, Sophie said, and this is a quote, so I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. "Such a fine sunny day, and I have to go. What does my death matter if through us thousands of people are awakened and stirred to action?" Let me read that again. "Such a fine sunny day, and I have to go. What does my death matter if through us thousands of people are awakened and stirred to action?" Freedom of speech was not allowed then, and we are seeing it today fall through our fingertips, fall through our social media, fall through what we can say to another person, fall through what we can say in public without being, you are this or you are that. The name calling begins. You get labeled, you get canceled. Your existence disappears. People's lives have been ruined, maybe not by a guillotine, maybe not by execution, but many have committed suicide after they have been canceled in this way that our country has gone. What does your freedom mean to you? What does it mean to you to be able to break away from the control of the government, to be really free, to really be free like Hans expressed? Freedom, it doesn't mean more taxes. It doesn't mean more laws. It means freedom. It means to be able to do and say and speak what you choose to do and say without it being persecuted. There is a fine line between hate speech and freedom of speech. And I think that it has become very muddy, and people can't really see that somebody's allowed to call me a name. I don't care. Like, what does that mean? That's their problem more than mine. Do I like, who do I tell as a conservative? Who do I tell that that person called me a name? But on the other side, we have the control of, there's a long list of names that if you say any of these words, you're considered a racist, a xenophobe. If you have a difference of opinion, if you live by the Bible and what it says about anything, if that's your guideline, then and you express it, you are probably going to be called out on it. I just want you to take to heart, and I want you to really think about and absorb this life of Sophie and Hans Scholl. How brave are you? Where's your line that you would bend? Where's your knee that you would drop? Do you stand for God, family, your country? Do you stand without a doubt, without wavering for your country? I just really want us to think about this 21-year-old who went to a guillotine saying, "Such a fine sunny day, and I have to go. What does my death matter if through us thousands of people are awakened and stirred to action?" What stirs you? I just want to ask you that today. What stirs you? What will stir you to action? That's all I have today. I hope this story really meant something to you. Um, I just think that it has been slid under a rock and twisted and hid from culture. And here in the United States, we don't even see the the people that had such strength to stand up for the Jewish people, for freedom of speech. Think about it, absorb it, look it up. It's a great story. Um, I looked at several different articles. So I'm signing off. This is Karen from White Willow, and I hope you have a fine, sunny day.